carved quite a figure in this world, didn't he? He was impressive in life, and he's even more so in passing. He was strong, determined, unambiguous, clear-headed, Johnny Mahoney. But big brother, here's to you. How much would John have relished this? Not just the outpouring of affection, the solemnity, the convergence of numerous tribes comprising his village, the village of which he was not only a member, but Johnny was a cousin, a brother, a leader, a yeoman, and an elder. He would not only have enjoyed this collective celebration as a witness to harmony, but he would have taken immense pleasure in having a microphone and a prohibition against any interruptions. So I was pondering, why do we eulogize people? Why are we eulogizing John? Because it's for us, it's for the living. It's for those of us who are still facing the grief of the loss of John. We celebrate him and his story. I've heard it said that tears of grief are simply the love that we did not express when our loved one was still with us. So we shouldn't be sad about our tears. It's so true. So let's celebrate Johnny. But this is not easy. Johnny was a complex person, but I'll try to distill his essence. Because Johnny was the kindest, the most selfless, diligent, generous, and intellectually curious member of our family. Johnny offered so much and he expected so little. People today, all the people I've met the past few days, I knew the names, I knew many of you, but we all shared John's path at various times in his life. He was a Boy Scout, technician, folk music aficionado, an inventor, problem solver, trivia expert, festival parking commandant, a trusted friend, a cheesemaker. He was all of these things. So I'd like to mention a few anecdotes from our early years, and I think we'll all recognize the Johnny that we knew and loved, even from these distant silhouettes. As children, Johnny and I formed in our backyard, under our mulberry tree, the Worm Protectors. We chased and threatened the birds, which dared to try to remove the worms that are under our protection. Do you recognize the kindness in this young boy, already feeling compelled to fight for justice for those weaker than himself, before he even knew what the world was like? John's moral compass remained true. When Johnny and I spent some time together in China in the 1980s, it was typical of buying crafts from vendors involved haggling. But when John wanted to buy something, he refused to employ this approach. When I said, bro, I'll get it for you. If I offer half the price that they're asking, they'll be delighted, it's totally fine. And John would not even let me haggle for him. He felt it was not right to pay the price. He should pay the price that they asked if he could afford it. And I think we all recognize this man and his goodness, no matter what age. Johnny would later apply his talents in sometimes unusual ways. For example, I was delighted to hear that when Franny was doing a lot more knitting in recent years, John somehow connected a motor to power her knitting wheel or something. I don't know what he did. Allowing her to produce more with less of the repetitive work that she didn't need to do. Her creativity was enough. So Johnny's mad scientist persona emerged early on. He spent hours extracting and gathering gunpowder from found shotgun shells and sulfur from chemistry sets, paraffin, ripping the heads off of matches, unrolling firecrackers. Heaven knows, he had a secret laboratory. It was terrifying, actually. But we were both fascinated by fire, and John only had more diligence than me. So one day, he assembled a very small oven in the backyard. He was using heavy steel spike plates that we had liberated from the tracks down in the Bond Shopping Center. He built a steel oven in the backyard. And I didn't really know quite what knew it was interesting enough that he had concealed it from our mom. He bundled all of these ingredients in a bag, wrapped it tightly in fabric, and he thought he had some kind of bomb. So he placed this thing in this spike oven plate thing in the backyard. He attached a long fuse he had made from a few dozen bottle rocket fuses he'd salvaged from, again, I don't know where. And we checked to make sure Mom was busy ironing, not surveilling us. And then John lit the fuse and we ran. We saw a little bit of smoke and then nothing. So John repaired the fuse, he tried again. We ran again, a little bit of smoke, wisps of flame, nothing. Again, John tinkered with it, added some more wax and oil and voodoo, I don't know, he lit it again. This time though, when I ran, for the sake of science, Johnny kept his face right up there. He wanted to see what was going on. So after a long delay, there was again smoke, but suddenly a big boom! A very loud blast, followed by a huge cloud. I thought maybe I lost my brother that time. As the smoke cloud dissipated, and there's a smell like we'd seen from Apocalypse Now. I saw John still crouched down in the smoke, peering in. And I heard the back door screen fly open and Mom came dashing out. So John bent upwards, still alive, stood up. Fortunately, he was already wearing glasses at this age. He takes them off. His face was like the negative photo of a raccoon. White circles, but the rest of his stunned face was dark. His eyebrows, which were glorious later in life, they were essentially fallen. His hair singed. And I expected to see tears, like he'd be terrified, crying, something. No, his face lights up like a lottery winner. It's like, yeah, it wasn't quite the moonshot John but this early trial affirmed for John, his backyard science was enough to achieve great things. My mom would not agree, but Johnny, this was a huge success. And I'm sure many of you recognized in this charred image, gleeful, sooty, hairless-faced boy. He was the intrepid one, the boy who would someday speak at great length about the virtues of polytetrafluoroethylene, hours on end. Yeah, it just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? So how did my brother impact the world? God gave Johnny formidable talents. And Johnny generously shared them all. There are countless ways, but here are a few. For example, with me, if John was the reader, I was Cliff's Notes. The only price was to endure not just hearing that novel conveyed as an oral tradition, like Penobscot Indians sitting around a fire, but the cost was also the lesson of, you may not be able to regurgitate the story to pass a test, Brother Billy, but do you understand it as I do? That would hit really hard. But he wasn't just smart. He knew he had a superior processor going on, but this meant he required data. So Johnny read everything, anything, and he retained it. And I'm literally speaking encyclopedias, dictionaries, the entire Happy Hollister's book series, Chilton's auto repair manuals, novels, train schedules, album liner notes, even cereal boxes before it was cool. Everything he could read, he read. Now I'm sure everybody recognizes that Johnny, that facet of him, that aspect. So of course, no one in their right mind would debate Johnny. He knew everything. He talked about 16-wheel train versus 12, whatever it was, he knew about it. So people in their right mind wouldn't debate John. I, for the record, was often not in my right mind. We argued a lot, and often. And I learned so much from John, and he would bury me with facts, and knowledge, and insight, and I learned so much. I learned how to obfuscate, extrapolate, exaggerate, self-deprecate, but because reading Johnny on facts and merits was a fool's errand, I learned to fabricate. But perhaps a few here recognize the difficult aspects of debating Johnny. There's another exquisite facet of Johnny. In our younger years, because John was smart and sometimes indelicate when wielding his knowledge. Some kids, as kids do, would demean themselves by taking a lower road, and they would pick on John. A person of John's character should never be subjected to such treatment. And John would fight to protect himself, but I noted that even when he enjoyed advantage and could have inflicted pain in return such as he endured, he didn't. And it took years, but I eventually learned from John's example. I personally benefited from his inability to actually hurt someone who was vulnerable. We could all take to heart John's virtue of control, kindness. Avoid taking advantage just because we can. I'd like to add that despite my many sincere expressions of apologies as an adult for my failing to better support and defend Johnny in our childhood years, I still feel shame for not having his courage and not having done more to defend my brother during those early years. But I cannot honor my brother's memory without honoring his partner in life, Fran. Johnny loved Fran dearly, as she loved him. We all recognize that with most of us, hugging Johnny, it was like embracing something like a cross between a pineapple and a Rottweiler. But not when he held Fran. I was very incredibly blessed to be able to spend a lot of time with them both recently. Theirs was a tender and a beautiful relationship. Fran revealed facets of Johnny I had never seen. They had a sweetness, a vulnerability. I hadn't seen that since childhood, if ever. Fran was the sunshine in Johnny's meadow. She was the violin, he was the bow. They were so beautiful together. As things unfolded in Germany last month, and John endured an inexpressible trial, discomfort, indignities, sleeplessness, deprivations, confusion week after week, and Fran remained steadfast. Such a strong woman. I never saw her cry. She never flinched when, I saw her cry, but Johnny never saw her cry. She was the bravest woman I've ever met. He would grumble about his pain. She would just cheer him up. It was amazing. Everyone should have been lucky to have seen that. And I was also fortunate to witness a few of their sweet moments of tenderness, exchanging whispered words of connection. And Fran was able to liberate Johnny from this cold, antiseptic space of an ICU. And she would fly with him to this secret, shared place known only to them. I was humbled to see this strong, resilient, terrified woman tirelessly propelling Johnny forward, powered only with German soft pretzels and courage.
Good pretzels.
And some energy bars. Thank you, my sister, for loving Johnny so fiercely. Thank you all for celebrating Johnny today. Thanks for listening to me share a few of my many memories and impressions, and seeing some of the many facets of my brother Johnny. Facets sometimes help us gain perspective, which change our perception of the beauty of a jewel. Johnny indeed was at a gem. I love Johnny, and I want to miss you, my brother.